This video is sponsored by Card Kingdom. If you want Magic singles or sealed product, use my link in the description. Hi everyone, I'm Nitzahone, and with this video I'm kicking off my Spider-Man and Through the Omenpaths set review. Over the next several days, I'll give my thoughts on every single card in these two sets and how I think they'll perform in Limited, and we're starting with a look at the multicolored and colorless cards. This is always a fun place to begin, because multicolored cards tend to introduce us to the format's two color archetypes, and they also tend to be some of the most powerful cards in this set. For each of these cards, I'll discuss how I think they'll perform in Limited, that means draft and sealed, and I'll punctuate each evaluation with the letter grade. If you're new to my set reviews and unsure of what my letter grades mean, you can find a guide in the description for this video. Before we start talking about the nuts and bolts of this kind of video, let me address the elephant in the room. Yes, this set review and all of the rest of the videos coming out in the next several days are covering two sets, but they're almost identical. Wizards of the Coast didn't get licensing for Spider-Man stuff on Arena, so that set, which is mechanically identical, is an in-universe set for Magic. So the cards look different, have different names, and on occasion even have slightly different text when it comes to mechanic names and subtypes, but overall the cards are the same. As such, for each card, I'll actually be showing two cards. That's why this set review is a little bit later than it would usually be. I wanted to wait until they released the Through the Omenpaths card gallery so people who are Arena only can hone in on those card names. That said, I don't think anyone wants me to read both card names for every single card, so a choice had to be made, and ultimately, I decided that for each of these cards, I'll just be reading the Spider-Man version of it, as in many ways this is the true set, and it is the one people will be playing at the pre-release. Alright, with that weirdness out of the way, there are a few important things to keep in mind as I review these cards. First, because we're only talking about draft and sealed, I'm only going to be talking about cards that can be found in play boosters. This set has lots of supplementary products that have cards that won't show up in play boosters, like cards from the Eternal Legal set. So if there's a card that you think is missing from this video, it's probably not in play boosters. There is a bonus sheet in play boosters, but it's super rare, with one card appearing in every 24 packs, so I'm going to address those in the last set review video. Second, these are, of course, my evaluations of these cards before it's possible to play this new limited format, since my goal is to have my set review done in time for the pre-release, and that means I'll be wrong about some stuff, but as the format comes into focus, I'll be doing videos where I discuss how things have turned out. Lastly, I want to let you know that there are some set review related perks for being a channel member or a patron. You get access to my ongoing set notes during preview season, and you'll also get a spreadsheet with all of my grades once a set review is complete. If those perks interest you, check out the description where you can find out how to support the channel using one of those methods. Alright, without further ado, let's dive in with a look at the multicolored and colorless cards in Spider-Man and into the Omenpaths. First up, it's Aranya, Heart of the Spider. For one generic, a red, and a white, it's a 3/3 legendary spider-human hero at rare. Whenever you attack, you put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature, and whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Modified is a returning mechanic, and it's basically a grouping of different ways to augment your creatures. A modified creature is one that's equipped, one that has an aura you control attached to it, or one that has counters on it. So this is great. It's an attack trigger, and that means you can get that first counter the turn she comes down, and then she can start effectively drawing you cards with your augmented creatures. Notably, her combat damage trigger does not say one or more, so each modified creature that hits your opponent will let you exile the top card. You do have to play it the turn she reveals it though, so keep that in mind. Either way, she's going to come down and deliver value right away 99% of the time, and she will snowball if left unchecked. I think that's a bomb. I'm giving this card an A. Next up, it's Bioorganic Carapace, which for two generic, a white, and a blue is a rare artifact equipment. When it enters, you attach it to target creature you control. The equipped creature gets +2/+2 and has, whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, draw a card for each modified creature you control, and it equips for two generic. So, we're starting this review with two really strong cards, apparently. It's rare for equipment to reach bomb status, but I think this one does. It equips for free, and makes a creature a much better attacker right away. And there's a good chance your opponent can't block it. Then you draw at least one card when they can't, and then it's super easy to equip after that, and it makes basically anything into a threatening value engine. That's definitely an A. Next up, it's Carnage, Crimson Chaos, which for two generic, a black and a red, is a 4/3 legendary symbiote villain at rare, has trample. When it enters, you return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains. This creature attacks each combat if able, and when this creature deals combat damage to a player, sacrifice it. It also has Mayhem for a black and a red. This is a new mechanic, and it means if you discarded this card, you can cast it from the graveyard that turn. So it's like flashback, but it's only active the turn you discard this from your hand, and obviously you have to discard it using some other effect, but there are several of those in the format. So Carnage will usually have something to reanimate, and while he does force that creature into an attack that will probably kill the creature, you can get value from enters and leaves the battlefield triggers, not to mention the attack itself. Also, if you wait until your second main phase to cast Carnage, you do get to hold on to those two abilities until your next turn, and the reanimated creature can even threaten to block and survive, because it has to hit an opponent to get sacrificed. So overall, I think we're looking at a powerful card that will frequently deliver some meaningful value beyond its own body. Sometimes you'll be able to cast it for 2, and that's great. But there are going to be a decent chunk of times where you can't reanimate anything, and that makes it a lot less impressive. So I think it's just a B. Next up, it's Cheering Crowd, which for 1 generic and 1 red-green hybrid mana is a 2/2 human citizen at rare. At the beginning of each player's first main phase, that player may put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. If they do, they add colorless mana for each counter on it. Obviously, on your turn, you're always giving this a counter and getting mana. Meanwhile, your opponent will do it when they can make use of the mana. Ramping your opponent definitely isn't ideal, but there are a decent number of situations where they can't really use it, and situations where you getting a counter is worth the trade. Like if they use the mana to remove the crowd, sure, it's just a wash, but that's not the end of the world. Bad news is, playing this on turn 2 and ramping your opponent is going to hurt sometimes. This is definitely going to create some weird situations. Sometimes you'll help your opponent, but you're also helping yourself, and you're the one who has a creature that's constantly growing. So overall, I think it benefits you more than it hurts you, and I think it's actually a quality card, giving it a B-. Next up, it's Cosmic Spider-Man, which for a white, blue, a black, a red, and a green is a 5/5 legendary spider-human hero at Mythic Rare. It has flying, first strike, trample, lifelink, and haste. At the beginning of combat on your turn, other spiders you control gain flying, first strike, trample, lifelink, and haste until end of turn. So if you can get this mana going, this is really good, since it can smash in immediately and gain you life, while also probably buffing some of your other creatures. There are lots of spiders in this set, but this kind of mana is going to be pretty brutal to produce in this format, even though there is a cycle of common dual lands, and you've got an Evolving Wilds variant and stuff like that. You're just not going to be able to pull it off very often, and I think that means this is just a D. Like, there are going to be maybe really rare occasions where you have the best mana ever, and you can play this, and it's basically going to be an A, but in most decks, even with like pretty good mana, it's going to perform like a D because it'll be stuck in your hand all the time. Next up, it's Dr. Octopus, Master Planner, which for 5 generic, a blue, and a black is a 4/8 legendary human scientist villain at Mythic Rare. Other villains you control get +2/+2. Your maximum hand size is 8, and at the beginning of your end step, if you have fewer than 8 cards in your hand, draw cards equal to the difference. So there are a lot of villains in the set, and that's the blue-black theme, so this is likely to buff a couple of things in a big way, and then he's going to draw you a ton of cards. One thing to keep in mind, though, is that his draw trigger is not a mate trigger, so if you're not careful and unload your whole hand at the wrong time, you might deck yourself. The good news is you have lots of control over how many cards it draws you based on what you do and don't play, and most of the time, the first time he draws you like 7 cards will give you enough juice to just win the game before your library disappears. Doesn't hurt to have some sacrifice outlets around, though. Still, he's a bomb, one with a sometimes deadly upside, but all those cards are insane value, and he even adds to the board significantly most of the time. I think he's an A. Next up, it's Gallant Citizen, which for 2 green-white hybrid mana is a 1/1 human citizen at common, and when it enters, you draw a card. We've seen lots of 2 mana 1/1s that draw you a card when they enter, and they are pretty much always quality cards. It's not quite a full-blown 2-for-1 most of the time, as the 1/1 body isn't usually worth a whole card, but you do get more than a card worth of value, and if you can find some ways to get more out of the citizen itself, it feels really good. One example of this is to be able to return it to your hand using the web slinging mechanic, which involves bouncing a creature to your hand. It's going to be hard to set that up all the time because your opponent will often just block and kill this small thing, and the creature has to be tapped to return to your hand. But when you can do that, the value is going to be pretty absurd, giving this a C+. Next up, it's Green Goblin Revenant, which for 3 generic, a black, and a red is a 3/3 legendary goblin human villain at uncommon. It's got flying and death touch, and when it attacks, you discard a card, then draw a card for each card you've discarded this turn. Man, I really wish this was an enters or attacks trigger. It would be so much better. But because it isn't, you're playing a woefully inefficient creature that won't generate value until you have an attack. Death Touch does mean that your opponent can't just slam their biggest creature into it, at least, but they're usually still going to have some pretty good attacks on turn 5 when you play your 3/3. And there are also 2 mana ways to kill this at lower rarities, and that's really what holds it back the most. That sort of tempo hit is just going to come up all the time. It's been a very long time since we saw a 5 mana 3/3, even with like flying and another keyword, that doesn't have an enters trigger, actually succeed in limited, in a big way at least. This does give you a free way to set up Mayhem. That's the idea here. Black-Red is about that Mayhem mechanic, and that's nice. It's repeatable too, and if you start casting things at a discount and getting a bunch of value out of them, that's going to feel great. My concern is that you're just not going to get to the point where you can do that most of the time because this is so woefully inefficient as a baseline. So I think it's just a C, and if I'm going to be wrong about it, it's probably in the other direction. Next up, it's Jackal, Genius Geneticist, which for a green and a blue is a 1/1 legendary human scientist villain at rare. It's got trample. Whenever you cast a creature spell with mana value equal to Jackal's power, copy that spell, except the copy isn't legendary, then put a +1/+1 counter on Jackal. This is a cool design, but it is tough to line up in limited. Getting him in play and then casting a spell of the right value is tough, though if your deck has like 5 1-drops, it's definitely not impossible for you to play Jackal on 3, and then cast a 1-mana creature spell that gets doubled, and at that point, you're feeling pretty good about things. And if you can also play a 2-drop creature later, which is generally easier in most decks, things can get crazy. You can of course also put like a counter on it, in which case it's easier to start to get it going. You can copy one of your 2-drops. But it still feels like limited decks just aren't that good at setting something like this up. You can't build your deck entirely around Jackal and have that work out in limited. You can't just like easily go up a chain where you're like, I cast a 1-mana thing, then a 2-mana thing. It's just not going to happen. That said, just triggering this once, like I said, is good. So it's not terrible, it's not unplayable, but I think there are going to be plenty of games where you play this and you can't trigger it too, so I think it ends up just being a C. Next up, it's Craven, Proud Predator, which for 1 generic, a red and a green, is a star 4 legendary human warrior villain at uncommon. It's got vigilance, and its power is equal to the greatest mana value among permanents you control. So on his own, he's a 3 mana 3/4 with vigilance. That's a card you'd pretty much always play, and his power will often be higher. It's true that he's mostly just relevant in combat, he doesn't have any other abilities, but vigilance makes sure he's a factor on both players' turns, so this looks like a nice signpost uncommon for red-green, a color pair that's about high mana value cards, especially permanents, but it's not an incredible one. I'm giving it a C+. Next up, it's Craven the Hunter, which for 1 generic, a black and a green, is a 4/3 legendary human warrior villain at rare. It's got trample, and whenever a creature an opponent controls with the greatest power among creatures that player controls dies, draw a card and put a +1/+1 counter on Craven the Hunter. So if you can trigger this once, you're going to feel like you're way ahead. However, triggering him isn't always easy. The best way to do it is with removal that is simply pointed at your opponent's best creature, but absent that, your opponent can keep you from triggering this by making the right choices in many situations. Of course, sometimes they'll only have one creature they have to block with, and that will trigger Craven too. He's also got a good baseline with a ceiling that's really high, so I think he's a B. Next up, it's Mary Jane Watson, which for 1 generic and a green-white hybrid mana is a 2/2 legendary human performer at rare. Whenever a spider you control enters, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. This set has lots of spiders, 39 cards with the type and several more that make spider tokens, so drawing one card with her definitely isn't a huge ask, and if you do that, you're already way ahead. A 2-mana 2/2 that draws you a card when it enters, if you look at it that way, is an absurd magic card, and she can get even better than that if you have a bunch of spiders, and I don't really think she needs a build-around grade. She's in 2 colors that have tons and tons of spiders, giving her a B. Next up, it's Mr. Negative, which for 5 generic, a white and a black, is a 5/5 legendary human villain at Mythic Rare. It's got Vigilance and Lifelink, and when Mr. Negative enters, you may exchange life totals with target opponent. If you lost life this way, draw that many cards. Life exchange cards are normally horrendous in limited, but that is because they're only good when you have less life. But Mr. Negative gets around that. Now you get to draw cards if your opponent had less life, so the enters trigger is likely to be meaningful either way, and sometimes really strong. And you don't have to worry too much about losing life because he's also a sizable lifelinker. The stats aren't great for 7 mana, of course, but with everything he has going on, he looks quite good to me, although he's still a little too finicky and expensive to be a straight up bomb. His Inter's trigger is always going to do something, and I think that makes him really good, and sometimes it'll just draw you a ton of cards, giving him a B+. Next up, it's Mob Lookout, which for 1 generic and a blue-black hybrid mana is a 0/3 human rogue villain at common. When it enters, target creature you control connives. This is a returning mechanic, and that means you draw a card, then discard a card, and if you discard a non-land, you put a +1/+1 counter on the creature that connived, which in this case can be any creature you control. This looks like a really nice 2-drop. I mean, Connive performed really well in Streets of New Capenna. One of the best commons in the set was a 2-mana 2/1 that could connive when it enters. This is a 2-mana 0/3 that can connive on its own, so you can do it even if it's alone, but you can also choose to have something else connive, in which case you might get a counter. And obviously, that's better. You know, it's far more flexible than a creature that enters and can only connive on itself. That said, you do have a 0/3 body that is pretty irrelevant beyond like the one trigger you get out of it, but that one trigger is strong. It helps you load your graveyard, it helps set up Mayhem, and connive is just a strong mechanic anyway. So I think this is a very good common. I'm giving it a C+, and it wouldn't be super shocking to me after what we saw in New Capenna if it was like a B-. Next up, it's Morbius, the Living Vampire, which for 2 generic, a blue and a black, is a 3/1 legendary vampire scientist villain at uncommon. It's got Flying Vigilance and Lifelink, and you can pay a blue and a black and exile it from your graveyard to look at your top 3 cards, put 1 into your hand, and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So if the skies are clear, Morbius can run away with the game in a huge way. Bad news is, he does die to multiple 1-mana removal spells at lower rarities, and that's absolutely brutal for a 4-drop, but there's also some really good news, since if your opponent does that, you're likely to still get a 2-for-1, because it can use this ability really efficiently from the graveyard and give you some powerful card selection. So unlike most really understated creatures who die to cheap removal where it's like a complete nightmare, like the Green Goblin we saw earlier, this one will make sure in most cases that you get some value no matter what, and if your opponent doesn't kill Morbius, like, he can just run away with the game single-handedly because of the combination of keywords, especially flying and lifelink. The low toughness is still a problem, but it's not as big of one. I'm giving it a B-. Next up, it's Prowler, Clawed Thief, which for 1 generic, a blue and a black, is a 2/3 legendary human rogue villain at uncommon. It's got Menace. Whenever another villain you control enters, Prowler connives. Conniving is great, and the blue-black color pair loves it, as well as loving villains, which Prowler shows you, both things. And it is a bummer that Prowler won't start conniving the turn you play it in most cases, but having the ability to grow and an evasive keyword and a mechanic that generates a lot of value is pretty good, and it will get scarier the longer the game goes on. He is a little too slow to warrant being like an insane signpost uncommon. Like, I feel like Morbius is better because of the almost inevitable 2-for-1, but this still looks pretty good to me. I'm giving it a C+. Next up, it's Pumpkin Bombardment, which for a black-red hybrid mana is a common sorcery. As an additional cost to cast it, you either discard a card or pay 2 generic, and it deals 3 damage to target creature. An easy-to-cast 3-mana deal 3 at sorcery speed is probably an okay card to begin with. I mean, you're not going to be ecstatic about playing it, but the flexibility of the card and it being relatively easy to cast probably means it would be like a C- or something. But if you throw in the upside of discarding things, especially with the Mayhem mechanic in the format, means that sometimes this is going to generate like significant additional value because you spend 1 mana to cast it, and then you're also going to get whatever you discarded with Mayhem, and that's going to happen often enough for this to be a C+. Next up, it's Rhino, Barreling Brute, which for 3 generic, 2 red, and 2 green is a 6/7 legendary human villain at uncommon. It's got Vigilance, Trample, and Haste, and when it attacks, if you've cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater this turn, draw a card. By the way, you've probably noticed that color pairs have 2 signpost uncommons in this set, and that's because this is a set with only 5 like super supported color pairs, those being the 5 allied color pairs. So it's a little different than most sets. It's like Strixhaven. That's the most recent set that was like this. Anyway, Rhino does count himself, and that means he'll draw you a card the turn he comes down pretty much every time, because there's basically no reason not to attack with a huge hasty vigilance creature. He is expensive though, and he costs 2 mana of his 2 colors, which is a real hurdle sometimes. I do think casting him is going to win a lot of games, but I worry about reaching that point consistently, so I've got him at a C+. Next up, it's Rhino's Rampage, which for a red-green hybrid mana is an uncommon sorcery. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It fights target creature an opponent controls. When excess damage is dealt to the creature an opponent controls this way, destroy up to 1 target non-creature artifact with mana value 3 or less. So, This is a fight spell that doesn't buff toughness at all, and that's a pretty big bummer. Like, a toughness boost is usually better with fight spells than a power boost is, because your creature gets damaged too. And that means your creature needs to be tough enough to survive the fight already, and that makes it a lot harder for a creature to punch up, even with +1 power. Sometimes you will get to destroy an artifact, which is nice, and this is super cheap, but I think it'll be hard enough to find spots with it to be a premium removal spell. I'm giving it a C+. Next up, it's Scarlet Spider, Ben Riley, which for 1 generic, a red and a green, is a 4/3 legendary spider human hero at rare. It's got web slinging for a red and a green, and this is an alternate cost where you pay that mana and return a tapped creature you control to its owner's hand. He's got trample, and if Scarlet Spider was cast using web slinging, he enters with X +1/+1 counters on him, where X is the mana value of the returned creature. So this has a nice baseline and will often be better than that thanks to web slinging. If you return something with like an interest trigger, get some counters on this, and then cast that thing later, or potentially in the same turn since you're only spending 2 mana to cast this, it's going to feel really good, and it'll be a pretty scary threat, giving him a B. Next up, it's Scarlet Spider Kane, which for a black and a red is a 2/1 spider human hero at uncommon. It's legendary. Has Menace. When it enters, you may discard a card, and if you do, you put a +1/+1 counter on him. And he has Mayhem for a black-red hybrid mana. This looks pretty good to me. It's an enabler and a payoff for discarding, and a 2-mana 3/2 Menace is going to feel pretty good when you're discarding for value, giving this a B-. Next up, it's Shriek Treble Maker, which for 2 generic and a black-red hybrid mana is a 2/3 legendary mutant villain at uncommon. At the beginning of your first main phase, you may discard a card. When you do, target creature can't block this turn. And whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, Shriek deals 1 damage to that player. So in most formats, you do not want to discard a card to make a creature unable to block very often, not unless it basically wins you the game, which it does sometimes, but you do have to wait a whole turn for that ability too. The idea is to discard stuff for value, though, which of course you can do in this format, especially using Mayhem, and this is a repeatable way to help you trigger that kind of thing. And the ping effect can often make blocking really hard on your opponent too, especially when they're in like single-digit life totals. So this does have some real value engine potential and is good at pressuring the opponent, and I think that overcomes having some pretty bad stats, but it is going to be too inconsistent to be like amazing. I'm giving it a C+. Next up, it's Silk Webweaver, which for 2 generic, a green and a white, is a 3/5 legendary spider human hero at rare. It has web slinging for 1 generic, a green and a white. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a 1/1 green and white human creature token. And you can pay 3 generic, a green and a white, and give your whole board +2/+2 in vigilance until end of turn. Yeah, this card is nuts. Anytime we see a reasonably statted creature that can pump out creature tokens when you do something that's very easy to do, it ends up being a super strong card, and this is definitely one of those. While it's true she won't normally do something right away, there's a good chance she will on your next turn, and because of web slinging, you can get her down earlier, return a creature to do it, and then play that creature and now get a 1/1. Like if you have a 1-drop, you can set that up. You know, there's a 1-mana 1/1 flying pigeon that can set this up for you while also making a food token, and then you'll immediately get that 1/1 in the same turn. That said, she does not guarantee you more than a card of value right away, but your opponent is in a world of trouble the moment you untap, whether you're casting a creature or using the mass pump, and her size means your opponent can virtually never take her down efficiently either. I think she's an A. Next up, it's Skyward Spider, which for 2 blue-white hybrid mana is a 2/2 spider human hero at common. It's got ward 2, and it has flying as long as it's modified. This is not very exciting. A 2-mana 2/2 that always has flying and ward 2 would be a C+ at the very best, and this definitely isn't that since it takes some work. It seems like an okay 2-drop for blue-white decks that are good at modifying, but it's hard enough to cast in every other color combination that I don't think you should bother for the most part. I'm giving it a C-. Next up, it's Spider Manifestation, which for 1 generic and a green-red hybrid mana is a 2/2 spider avatar at common. It's got reach, it can tap for red or green, and whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, you untap it. A 2-mana 2/2 that can only tap for red or green is already a C+. It has passable stats and can legitimately ramp your mana, and because this is red-green hybrid, it can also help you splash either red or green in a deck that isn't that exact color combination. Throw in reach and the ability to untap, and we have a very strong common, giving this a B-. Next up, it's Spider Girl Legacy Hero, which for a green and a white is a 2/2 legendary spider human hero at uncommon. During your turn, she has flying, and when she leaves the battlefield, you create a 1/1 green and white human citizen creature token. A 2-mana 2/2 with flying on your turn is solid, and if she dies, you get something back. What she really wants you to do, though, is use web slinging to bounce her to your hand. That still gives you a 1/1, and flying can help set that up. She is a good payoff for web slinging, which is a big part of what green-white is about. The other thing it's about is going wide, and this does both. I'm giving her a C+. Next up, it's Spider-Man 2099, which for a blue and a red is a 2/3 legendary spider-human hero at rare. You can't cast Spider-Man 2099 during your first, second, or third turns of the game. It has double strike and vigilance, and at the beginning of your end step, if you've played a land or cast a spell this turn from anywhere other than your hand, Spider-Man 2099 deals damage equal to his power to any target. So a 2-mana 2/3 double strike and vigilance is always going to be relevant. So the fact you can't cast it until turn 4 or later, not a huge deal. His in-step trigger is good, albeit far from automatic when it comes to triggering it. And you're probably going to have like 2 cards with it, and then maybe a couple more cards in your deck that exile cards from the top of your library and let you play them. And you really just need to trigger it once for this to feel super insane. But I do think it's hard enough to trigger that it's probably just a B. Next up, it's Spider-Man India, which for 3 generic, a green and a white, is a 4/4 spider-human hero at uncommon. It's legendary, of course. Has web slinging for 1 generic, a green and a white, and whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains flying until end of turn. I really don't like a 5-mana 4/4, even with a pretty nice cast a creature trigger, but web slinging means getting this down earlier, and web slinging itself synergizes with this, because it means you have a creature to cast. So you bounce something else. Once again, let's bring up the pigeon, and then play it again later, and you get a counter and get to give flying to something, and it can target itself. I do think it's slow enough that it's not incredible, but I kind of hope it is. For now, I think it's just a C+. Next up, it's Spider-Woman Stunning Savior, which for 1 generic and a blue-white hybrid mana is a 2/2 legendary spider-human hero at rare. It's got flying, and artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter tapped. The combination of a very efficient 2-drop and forcing your opponent's stuff to enter tapped is pretty gross, as it makes it even more likely she can keep getting in through the air, while also supporting all your other stuff. She's not a 2-for-1 or anything, but she is super efficient for what she is, so I think she's worthy of a B. Next up, it's the Spot Living Portal, which for 3 generic, a white and a black, is a 4/4 legendary human scientist villain at rare. When it enters, you exile up to 1 target non-land permanent and up to 1 target non-land permanent card from a graveyard. When the Spot dies, put him on the bottom of his owner's library. If you do, return the exiled cards to their owner's hands. This is really strong. The idea is to exile an opposing non-land permanent and a non-land permanent from your graveyard. So when you do that, we're talking about a 5-mana 4/4 that Oblivion Rings something, which is already a great card. And while your opponent does get the card back if this creature goes down, you're also getting something back from your graveyard. So typically you come out ahead in basically every way. And also, the card having to go back to their hand is usually better than it just coming back into play. Even if the creature has like an enters trigger or whatever, at least they have to pay for the card again to put it back into play. So I think this is a bomb. It's going to generate tons of value. And then the fact that you know it's on the bottom of your library, like it's the kind of card that can win you the game on the last turn of the game when you have no cards left too, since it's a removal spell. So it looks really good to me. I'm giving it an A. Next up, it's Sun Spider Nimble Weber, which for 3 generic and a blue-white hybrid mana is a 3/2 legendary spider-human hero at uncommon. During your turn, it has flying, and when it enters, you search your library for an aura or equipment, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So the stat line here is bad, but that's largely made up for by having an enters trigger that virtually guarantees a 2-for-1. You know, blue-white is really about modifying your creatures too, so it's likely to have some synergy beyond the fact that it has internal synergy already, since a mediocre flying creature is a pretty great place to put your auras or equipment. So I think this looks really good. It'll generate a 2-for-1, giving it a B-. Next up, it's Superior Spider-Man, which for 2 generic, a blue and a black, is a 4/4 legendary spider-human hero at rare. You may have Superior Spider-Man enter as a copy of any creature card in a graveyard, except his name is Superior Spider-Man and he's a 4/4 spider-human hero in addition to his other types. When you do, exile that card. So this is always a 4/4, and that means you'll almost always have something worth copying, especially since he looks at both graveyards. That even means that random 2-mana 1/1s with interest triggers become pretty good to copy, though it does also mean that big-bodied creatures getting copied isn't nearly as good. Still, I think overall it's a net positive, and you'll feel pretty good about casting this in most situations, and the fail case is still a 4-mana 4/4. I'm giving this a B. Next up, it's Symbiote Spider-Man, which for 2 generic and a blue-black hybrid mana is a 2/4 legendary Symbiote Spider hero at rare. When it deals combat damage to a player, look at that many cards from the top of your library, put one of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. And when it's in your graveyard, you can pay 2 generic, a blue and a black, and exile it from your graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It gains this card's other abilities, activate only as a sorcery. So a 3-mana 2/4 with just this combat trigger is a good card. It can't always get in, of course, but just one hit gives you a lot of value. And then you can buff something else from the graveyard and give it this powerful combat damage trigger, which is often going to be the best way to actually trigger the effect. This is really good, giving it a B+. Next up, it's Ultimate Green Goblin, which for 1 generic and 2 black-red hybrid mana is a legendary goblin villain at rare. It's a 5/4. At the beginning of your upkeep, discard a card, then create a treasure token, and it has Mayhem for 2 generic and a black-red hybrid mana. So the dream is to discard other cards with Mayhem, because then you're not really giving up anything. In fact, you get to cast whatever you discarded at a discount in most cases. That said, the situations where you don't have Mayhem cards, which will come up a significant chunk of the time, will make it hard to run this goblin out there when you really want to do it in the early game. So the potential here is impressive because it's such a big body and can be a value engine. I think Black-Red is into Mayhem enough for this to avoid needing like a strict build-around grade, but even in a deck with like 5 Mayhem cards, this is still going to fall flat sometimes, giving it a B-. Next up, it's Vulture Scheming Scavenger, which for 5 generic and a blue-black hybrid mana is a 4/6 legendary human artificer villain at uncommon. It's got flying, and when it attacks other villains you control, gain flying until end of turn. A 6-mana 4/6 flyer is kind of okay, but not really. And obviously, sending all your villains to the air is sweet, but that still means there's a window where your opponent can kill this for like 3 mana and come out way ahead because this is so freaking expensive. And while you're likely to have other villains, it isn't guaranteed, and there are lots of situations where you just can't attack with this thing. So I think it's just a D+. Next up, it's Web Warriors, which for 4 generic and a green-white hybrid mana is a 4/3 spider hero at uncommon. When it enters, you put a +1/+1 counter on each other creature you control. As long as you have 2 other creatures, this trigger will feel fine, and sometimes it'll feel insane. The set has enough counter payouts for this to get an extra bump too, so I'm giving it a C+. And our last multicolored card is Wraith Vicious Vigilante, which for 1 generic and a blue-white hybrid mana is a 1/1 legendary human detective hero at uncommon. It's got double strike and it can't be blocked. So we've already seen blue-whites about modifying stuff, and that's definitely what you want to do with this creature. Even 1 counter makes this absolutely terrifying. The bad news is that the baseline is bad, mostly because it dies to multiple 1-mana spells in the set, and that is a huge blowout. Still, the ceiling here is enticing enough for me to give it a C+. All right, let's move to artifacts now. First up, we have Bagel and Schmear. Yeah, that's a magic card. Anyway, 1 generic, common, artifact, food. You can pay 1 white, tap it, and sacrifice it to put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature and draw a card. Activate only as a sorcery. And you can pay 2 generic and tap it and sacrifice it, and you gain 3 life and draw a card. We've seen lots of cheap food that can sacrifice for value and draw you a card, and it's basically never bad, but it's usually not great either. But hey, getting a counter and drawing a card doesn't hurt. I do kind of think you need access to that mode for this to be truly playable. Like, you don't want to play this in your deck unless you have white mana in it. And even then, I don't think it's great. I'm giving it a C-. Next up, it's Doc Ock's Tentacles. For 1 generic, it's a rare artifact equipment, and whenever a creature you control with mana value 5 or greater enters, you may attach this equipment to it. The equipped creature gets +4/+4, and it can equip for 5 generic. I don't think I like this. It does nothing for the first several turns of the game, and while the stats boost can make a creature big, that's all it does. Equipping to big stuff for free is good, but being able to buff smaller stuff is often more meaningful. This just seems too difficult to get going to be more than a D. Next up, it's Eerie Gravestone, which for 2 generic is a common artifact. When it enters, you draw a card. You pay 1 generic and a black and sacrifice it and mill 4 cards, and you can put a creature card from among those milled cards into your hand. I think this is actually pretty good. It draws you a card up front, and then you sacrifice it for value and another card. It's not quite Cryogen Relic, but it's kind of in the same neighborhood in its ability to give you something right away and even more later. Again, you do need to have black mana in your deck for this to really deliver. I'm giving it a C+. Next up, it's Hot Dog Cart, which for 3 generic is a common artifact. When it enters, you make a food token, and it gets tapped for 1 mana of any color. So this gives you 2 artifacts with 1 card. This format doesn't have a ton of ways to abuse that, but it does have a few. And just having a mana rock that can also gain you life is sort of a nice combination, as the life the food gives you can offset the problem of spending 3 mana on a card that doesn't add to the board initially. I think this does enough to be a C-. You'll play it when you need fixing or are super interested in ramp. Next up, it's Interdimensional Web Watch, which for 4 generic is a rare artifact. When it enters, exile the top 2 cards of your library. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. You can tap it for 2 mana in any combination of colors, but spend this mana only to cast spells from exile. So this is basically a 4 mana draw 2 that helps you play the cards you hit with it. Unfortunately, the format doesn't have a massive cast from exile theme. If it did, this would be really good because you'd have more stuff to use that mana on. There are a few cards that do it though, as we've noted, especially in red. There's often the effects that exile a card and you can play that card until end of turn. This works there. But most of the time when you have this card, you have to think about what it's doing all on its own. And that's a card that does generate a nice 2-for-1, but it's also one that doesn't really add to the board, so I think it's a C+. Next up, it's Iron Spider, Stark Upgrade, which for 3 generic is a 2/3 legendary artifact creature, spider hero at rare, has vigilance. You can tap it to put a +1/+1 counter on each artifact and or vehicle you control, each artifact creature, that is, and you can pay 2 generic and remove 2 +1/+1 counters from among artifacts you control to draw a card. This set doesn't have a huge artifact theme, but it does have a few artifact creatures, and Iron Spider can put the counters on itself too, and quickly become a real threat all on its own. The combination of vigilance and a tap ability also means you can attack with it, make your opponent block, and then tap it to put a counter on it and suddenly kill their 3/3 that's blocking it. Hopefully your opponent just doesn't block in that situation, because that's pretty bad for them, but you can see that that threat of activation itself will allow your creature to get in. And drawing cards with this is doable too, especially if you really do have other artifact creatures around. I think this is a B. Next up, it's Living Brain Mechanical Marvel, which for 4 generic is a 3/3 legendary artifact creature robot villain at uncommon. At the beginning of combat on your turn, target non-equipment artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with base power and toughness 3/3 until end of turn. Untap it. So this sort of has 2 modes. You can animate non-creature artifacts or buff smaller artifact creatures. That can be nice sometimes, but you need the right thing on board. And in the meantime, you have a way understated creature, one that won't even always have a meaningful trigger even when it does have targets. I do like that it's a beginning of combat trigger, so it can do something right away, but it's going to be hard enough to both line up getting Living Brain in play and having a hot dog card or whatever to animate at the right time for this to be very good. I think it's just a D+. Next up, it's Mechanical Mobster, which for 3 generic is a 2/1 artifact creature human robot villain at common. When it enters, you exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard and target creature you control connives. So this is basically a 3 mana 2/1 that gets to connive on anything, and that's a pretty solid card. It can also hate on the graveyard, which never hurts. I'm giving this a C. Next up, it's News Helicopter, which for 3 generic is a 1/1 artifact creature construct at common. It's got flying. When it enters, you create a 1/1 green and white human citizen creature token. So the rate here isn't very good, but getting 2 bodies out of 1 card, even when they're both pretty mediocre, does tend to make a card relatively playable. This gets especially interesting with web slinging, because you can get in with it because it has flying, bounce it to your hand, get another token, and so on, but it's probably still just a C-. Next up, it's Passenger Ferry, which for 3 generic mana is a common artifact vehicle. When it attacks, you can pay a blue mana, and when you do, another target attacking creature can't be blocked this turn, and it has Crew 2. A 3 mana 4/3 vehicle with Crew 2 is not good, and while making something else unblockable certainly has some value, having to crew this and then have blue mana and a creature who you want to make unblockable isn't even close to automatic. I think this is a D+. Next up, it's Peter Parker's Camera, which for 1 generic is a rare artifact, enters with 3 film counters on it. You can pay 2 generic and tap it and remove a film counter from it, and copy target activated or triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for the copy. It's usually way too hard to consistently copy abilities, especially when you need to spend additional mana. You need to have something with an ability and the camera at the same time, and then you need to have the mana left over after you use an ability or get a trigger, or you can't use it anyway. This will make you feel like you're mulliganing most of the time, and that's an F. Next up, it's Rocket-Powered Goblin Glider, which for 3 generic is a rare artifact equipment. When it enters, if it was cast from your graveyard, attach it to target creature you control. Equipped creature gets +2/+0 and has flying and haste, and it can equip for 2, and it has mayhem for 2. Casting this for 3 and equipping it for 2 isn't terrible, since it can very frequently make any creature into a bigger threat. The Mayhem upside is where you're really doing it though, since you get a huge discount, you don't have to pay the equip cost, and you pay 1 less mana to get it in play in the first place. I think this is a B+. Next up, it's Spiderbot, which for 2 generic is a 2/1 artifact creature, spider, robot, scout at common, it's got reach. When it enters, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, then shuffle and put that card on top. This is one of those paint by numbers cards that shows up in every set, more or less. 2 mana, 2/1 that puts a land from your deck on top of your library, and they're never good. They always have win rates significantly below the average. Sure, if you're desperate for fixing or a 2-drop, they can do it, but putting a land on top of your library is way worse than putting it into your hand. Like, don't underestimate how much worse that is, and you're playing a way subpar creature to do it, so I think it's just a D. Next up, it's Spider-Mobile, which for 3 generic is a 3/3 artifact vehicle at uncommon. It's got trample. When it attacks or blocks, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each spider you control, and it has crew 2. So this has a very bad baseline, and crewing is already like a setup cost that is significant, but for it not to feel completely terrible to crew it, you also need to have some spiders in play. And this set has lots of them, but you still have to account for the times where this is just a 3 mana, 3/3 vehicle with trample and crew 2, which would be an F. Like, that's just not a card you can play. It's a conditional creature that isn't even very impressive. So you really need to be buffing it a lot, and there are going to be times where you can, and that's why it's not an F, but it's still not very good, giving it a D. Next up, it's Spider Slayer, Hatred Honed, which for 2 generic is a 2/1 legendary artifact creature human villain at uncommon. When it deals combat damage to a spider, destroy that creature, and you can pay 6 generic and exile this from your graveyard to make 2 1/1 colorless robot artifact creature tokens with flying. Trading for spiders is cool and certainly relevant, but having the villain type and a nice late game graveyard ability is probably more important for this poorly statted creature. I'm giving it a C. Next up, it's Spider Suit, which for 1 generic mana is an uncommon artifact equipment. The equipped creature gets +2/+2 and is a spider hero in addition to its other types, and it equips for 3 generic. 1 to play and 3 to equip for this buff really doesn't do it for me. The equip is a little too expensive for it to be something that you can use with regularity before the late game, and at that point the buff is just less meaningful, giving this a D. Next up, it's Steel Wrecking Ball, which for 5 generic is a common artifact. When it enters, it deals 5 damage to target creature, and you can pay 1 generic and a red and discard the Steel Wrecking Ball from your hand to destroy target artifact. Without the discard effect, this would be like a D-level removal spell. It's sorcery, it only does 5 damage for 5 mana. You'll play it when you really need it, and then it has some upside if you can like blink it or return it to your hand and things like that. But it still wouldn't be very good. But this does add Shatter to the mix, like it basically turns into Shatter in your hand, one that generally can't be countered when that does come up in Limited. And there are some targets for it, and I do think that upgrades it some. It's still not always going to be good, you're still not going to play it all the time, but it's probably a C-. Next up, it's Subway Train, which for 2 generic is a 3/1 artifact vehicle at common. When it enters, you can pay a green mana, and if you do, you search a library for a basic land, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle, and it has crew 2. So this looks solid. It's going to provide good fixing in green, and sure, the vehicle itself is pretty bad, but this generates a legitimate 2-for-1, and the high power does make it reasonably likely you can trade it off. I'm giving it a C. All right, let's move to lands now, starting with the Daily Bugle building. It's an uncommon land that can tap for colorless. You can pay 1 generic and tap it and add 1 mana of any color, and you can pay 1 generic and tap it, and target legendary creature gains menace until end of turn, activate only as a sorcery. Filter lands are usually pretty solid these days. It's nice they can enter untapped and tap for colorless, so you don't fall behind on using your mana efficiently in a turn. And then they can help you splash and stuff, and at that point you are using your mana inefficiently, but it kind of gives you the best of both worlds. The menace upside here, not irrelevant either. This set has a ton of legendary creatures, and you can find ways to use that without too much trouble. It's pretty cheap too. Like, there are going to be times where activating this gives somebody lethal. So be ready for that. Pay attention to your opponent's lands. Giving it a C. Next up, it's Multiversal Passage, a rare land. When it enters, you choose a basic land type, then you can pay 2 life. If you don't, it enters tapped, and this land is the chosen type. So this provides really good fixing, especially since it enters untapped when you want it to. Only producing 1 color does make it a little worse when it comes to like splashing, but it can still do it, and it's great for your mana in any 2-color deck anyway, giving it a C+. Next up, it's Ominous Asylum. There's a whole cycle of these lands. All of them are common, and there are 5 of them, one for each allied color pair. They all enter tapped. They can all tap for mana of one of 2 colors. Ominous Asylum taps for black or red. And for all of them, you pay 4 generic and tap them, and you can surveil 1. We saw a similar cycle in Strixhaven, and they were good. Those lands scryed for the same cost, and I think surveil is better most of the time. This land fixes your mana and improves your draws while perhaps loading the graveyard for value, and that's really good. These are collectively a C+. Next up, it's Oscorp Industries, a rare land that enters tapped, and when it enters from a graveyard, you lose 2 life, and you can tap it for blue, black, or red, and it has Mayhem. So this is really good. I'm already on board with pretty much any tri-land, and sometimes you can discard this and use it as your land drop in a turn. When you do that, it's going to feel amazing, and it also makes it one of the easiest cards in the set to get Mayhem value out of, since you don't have to spend any mana. Even if you spent all of your mana on your discard outlet, you can still do this. Just don't drop your land for the turn. I'm giving this a B-. Next up, it's Urban Retreat, which is a rare land that enters tapped. It can tap for green, white, or blue. You can pay 2 generic and return a tapped creature you control to its owner's hand, and put this card from your hand onto the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. So, this is another nice tri-land with upside. You won't always be able to do something with this ability, but you will sometimes, as the set is set up with lots of payoffs for things leaving the battlefield, plus the usual presence of lots of enters triggers. I think this is a C+. Next up, it's Vibrant Cityscape, which is a common land that you can tap and sacrifice. Search your library for a basic land card, put it on the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So, Evolving Wilds is always a quality card. It's good at fixing, and it can help with some other random synergies like sacrificing and graveyards. It's a C+. So, those are all the multicolored and colorless cards in Spider-Man and through the Omenpaths. In the next video, I'll look at all the white and blue cards. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it and share it so that others can enjoy it too. If you want to make sure you catch future videos, including the rest of this set review, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to catch up on the rest of the set review, should those other videos already be out, you should see a playlist on your screen shortly. Thanks for watching.